There is a photograph that changes the way you see the world. Not because it is beautiful, not because it is dramatic, but because somewhere between the moment it was taken and the moment you are looking at it, the subject disappeared forever. These are real photographs, taken by real people, of animals that no longer walk this earth. And in most cases, nobody in the room understood what they were actually witnessing. Today, we are looking at 7 of the last photos ever taken of extinct animals. Some of these images were captured by scientists, some by zookeepers, some by complete strangers who happened to be in the right place at exactly the wrong time in history. One of these animals was photographed more times in its final decade than almost any other creature on Earth. Stay locked in until the end to find out. We make videos about the natural world that do not look away. Hit subscribe so you do not miss what is next. Now let us get into the photographs. We start in 1933, Beaumaris Zoo, Hobart, Tasmania, Australia. The animal in the cage is a thylacine, commonly called the Tasmanian tiger, though it was neither tiger nor wolf. It was a marsupial, a pouched predator with a striped back, a stiff tail, and a jaw that could open nearly 90 degrees. A biological anomaly. There was nothing else quite like it on the planet. The footage captured at the zoo is the most famous visual record of the species, a solitary thylacine pacing a small concrete enclosure. It yawns, it stretches, it circles. And then, on September 7, 1936, just 59 days after the Tasmanian government officially granted the thylacine protected status, it died. Alone. On a cold night, locked out of its sheltered sleeping quarters and left exposed to the elements. For decades, this animal was known to the world as Benjamin, described as a male, given a name, given a story. But in 2022, researchers confirmed that both the name and the sex were a myth. The name Benjamin was invented in 1968 by a man claiming to be a former zookeeper, a claim the zoo itself disputed. And the animal in the enclosure, it turned out, was almost certainly female. Her remains were found in a museum cabinet where they had sat unidentified for 86 years. The last known thylacine on Earth died unnamed, unseen for what she was, in an open enclosure while the paperwork declaring her species protected was still drying. The most famous footage, a 45-second black and white clip shot by naturalist David Flay in 1933, shows the thylacine mid-pace, striped flanks clearly visible, looking into the camera with an expression that reads, depending on how you are feeling, like either indifference or exhaustion. It is the last confirmed image of a living thylacine. In the early 1800s, the passenger pigeon was the most numerous bird on Earth. Some estimates put the total population at 3 to 5 billion, accounting for somewhere between 25 and 40% of all land birds in the United States. Flocks darkened the sky for days at a time. John James Audubon described watching a single flock pass overhead for 3 consecutive days without interruption. By 1914, only one bird remained. Her name was Martha. She lived at the Cincinnati Zoo, where she had been for years and where the last handful of captive passenger pigeons had died one by one around her. By 1910, she was alone. She died on September 1st, 1914, at approximately 1 o'clock in the afternoon. A photograph taken in Martha's final years shows her perched on a branch inside her exhibit, stocky, rust-breasted, slightly ruffled. She looks unremarkable. There is nothing in the image that tells you this bird is the last of her kind. Nothing that signals you are looking at the end of a species that once constituted a staggering fraction of all bird life on the continent. Martha's body was frozen into a 300-pound block of ice and shipped to the Smithsonian Institution, where it remains today. The Yangtze River in China is one of the longest rivers on Earth. For millions of years, it was home to one of the world's only freshwater dolphin species, the baiji, also called the goddess of the Yangtze, or the Yangtze River dolphin. It was pale blue-gray, nearly blind from millennia of navigating murky river water. Small by dolphin standards. Gentle. In 2006, an international team of scientists spent 6 weeks conducting a systematic survey of the entire length of the Yangtze River. They saw nothing. No sonar signals, no surface breaks, no fin. The baiji was declared functionally extinct. The last confirmed photograph of a living baiji was taken in 2002, a single animal captured briefly by researchers near Tongling. The image is grainy, taken at water level, showing the animal mid-surface with its characteristic small dorsal fin visible above the waterline. A dolphin that had survived on this planet for millions of years. A species that outlasted ice ages and tectonic shifts, destroyed in roughly 50 years by ship traffic, overfishing, dam construction, and industrial pollution. The baiji didn't fight back. It didn't go loudly. It simply disappeared, so quietly that no one could say with certainty exactly when the last one died or where, only that at some point between one survey and the next, it was gone. 4. The Western Black Rhinoceros. The Western Black Rhinoceros was a subspecies of black rhino found in the savanna regions of Central and West Africa. At the turn of the 20th century, its population numbered in the hundreds of thousands. By 2000, fewer than 10 animals were believed to exist. In 2006, a survey in Cameroon found none. In 2011, the International Union for Conservation of Nature officially declared it extinct. The last confirmed photographs of western black rhinos in the wild were taken in Cameroon in the early 2000s, surveillance images, camera trap stills, photographs by field researchers trying to document what was clearly a dying population. The animals in these images look, as rhinos do, ancient, armored, built for permanence. There is a particular photograph widely circulated in conservation literature of a single western black rhino taken in the Cameroon bush. The animal partially obscured by grass, its horn clearly visible, eyes catching the light. The photograph was taken not long before the final surveys came back empty. The western black rhinoceros was not wiped out by habitat destruction. It was wiped out almost entirely by poaching, specifically the demand for rhino horn in traditional medicine markets, where horn was believed, without any scientific basis, to carry curative properties. The horn is made of keratin, the same material as human fingernails. A species that survived the Pleistocene was killed for fingernails. In 1971, a Hungarian scientist named József Vagvolgi was on Pinta Island in the Galapagos studying snails when he found something that should not have existed, a Pinta Island tortoise. The subspecies was believed extinct, the result of centuries of hunting by sailors, and the subsequent destruction of the island's vegetation by introduced goats. But there he was, a single enormous tortoise alive grazing in the brush. Vagvolgi photographed him and reported back. The following spring, park rangers returned to the island and brought the tortoise to the Charles Darwin Research Station on Santa Cruz Island for his protection. He was named Lonesome George. For the next 41 years, Lonesome George lived at the research station. He was the last of his subspecies. Conservationists attempted repeatedly to find him a mate, introducing females from related subspecies in hopes of producing hybrid offspring that might preserve some portion of his genetic lineage. George showed little interest. On June 24, 2012, George was found dead by his longtime keeper, Fausto Lorena, who had cared for him for over 40 years. The photographs taken of Lonesome George across those 4 decades are numerous, but the ones that carry the most weight are the final ones. George in his later years, moving slowly across the enclosure he had occupied for most of his captive life. In those images, he looks like what he was: old, deliberate, unhurried. A creature for whom time operated on a different scale. This one hurts differently. The Rab's fringe-limbed tree frog was discovered in 2005 in the highlands of central Panama. It was a large, flat-faced, arboreal frog with enormous webbed hands that allowed it to glide between trees. Herpetologists described it as remarkable, visually distinctive, and behaviorally unusual, with a paternal care pattern almost unique among frogs. Males would guard egg clutches and allow tadpoles to feed on their own skin. It was discovered and went extinct within the same human generation. The cause was chytridiomycosis, a fungal disease that has devastated amphibian populations across Central and South America, with a speed and totality that has no real parallel in modern extinction history. By the time the species was formally named in 2008, it was already gone from the wild. A few individuals were brought into captivity. One by one, they died. The last known Rab's fringe-limbed tree frog was a male held at the Atlanta Botanical Garden. He was given a name by a keeper's young son. He was named Tuffy. Tuffy lived alone from roughly 2012 until his death on September 26, 2016. The Atlanta Botanical Garden documented him extensively in his final years. Photographs and video footage of a single frog sitting on a leaf, breathing, watching. The photographs are intimate in a way that wildlife photographs rarely are, because the photographers knew exactly what they were looking at. He was the last, and everyone in the room knew it. A species that had existed for millions of years, discovered by science, named, photographed, gone. All within 11 years. The Spix's macaw. You may know this bird without knowing its name. The Spix's macaw, a small, vivid blue parrot native to the dry woodland regions of northeastern Brazil, was the inspiration for the 2011 animated film Rio. The film was partly intended to raise awareness for the species' plight. By the time the movie came out, the wild population had been functionally gone for over a decade. The last confirmed wild Spix's macaw was a single male, observed in the Caraca region of Bahia, Brazil, from 1990 onward. He had been found alone, his flock, his breeding population, everything gone, lost to habitat destruction and the exotic bird trade, which had decimated the species through the 1970s and 1980s. Researchers tried to introduce a female from captivity in 1995. She disappeared after 7 weeks, killed by a collision with a power line. A series of photographs taken throughout the 1990s document this bird, perched in Caatinga trees, cobalt blue plumage, unmistakable against the pale, dry scrubland. Field researchers photographed him repeatedly over nearly a decade. He was documented more thoroughly than almost any other bird on the planet in his final years, precisely because everyone knew what was coming. He was last seen in October 2000. The Spix's macaw is not technically completely extinct. Captive breeding programs have preserved several hundred individuals, and in 2022, a group was reintroduced to Brazil in a carefully managed effort. But the wild population, the birds that lived freely in the Caatinga, that flew and nested and called without human supervision, that population ended with one bird. One bird photographed alone in a dry woodland for 10 years, waiting for another of his kind that never came. A thylacine pacing her cage, Martha on her perch, Tuffy on his leaf, a single blue parrot in a dry tree. Each of these photographs is evidence that someone was there, someone saw. And in most cases, it wasn't enough. Not because the world lacked the technology to act or the biology to understand what was happening, but because the decision was made, by omission or commission, to let it continue. Like and subscribe if you want more content like this. And leave a comment. Which of these animals did you know about before today? Which one hit hardest? We'll see you in the next one.